June 5th, 1944, just after midnight. Fields outside Dover, England. Rain sweeps sideways through the canvas of a makeshift command tent. The air smells of damp earth and gasoline. Inside, the men of the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, a unit that officially doesn't exist, huddle around a map of northern France. Their mission: make the enemy see ghosts. Lieutenant Colonel Billy Harris stands over the table, a thin cigarette glowing between his fingers. He's not a career soldier. He came from a studio on Broadway, where he once designed sets that could convince an audience of anything. Now, he's expected to do the same for the German High Command. Only this time, the audience carries machine guns. He studies the red pins marking the French coast. Calais, Cherbourg, Normandy. Each pin represents a potential landing site, and the stakes couldn't be higher. If they can make the Germans believe the invasion will strike Calais instead of Normandy, then the real troops waiting across the channel might live long enough to land. Behind him, the sound of air compressors roars to life. Outside the tent, in the rain-slicked fields, something extraordinary is happening. Dozens of men, bundled in oilskins, are inflating an army. Rubber tanks rise from the mud like sleeping giants awakening. In minutes, what was once an empty meadow becomes a fully armed armored division, at least from a few hundred feet in the air. Private Arthur Shilstone struggles with a hose that's whipping in the wind. He's 22 and nervous. A former art student from New York who used to paint murals in train stations. "You think they'll believe it?" he shouts over the hum of the compressor. "From up there?" his sergeant replies, nodding skyward. "They'll swear it's Patton himself." And that's exactly the idea. Patton. General George S. Patton, the Germans' most feared commander, is the centerpiece of this massive illusion. Though he's been sidelined after an incident in Sicily, the Germans don't know that. Every fake tank, every dummy truck, every whisper of radio chatter will point to one conclusion. Patton's mighty 1st U.S. Army Group is preparing to cross at Calais. But there is no Army Group, no Patton. Only artists, sound engineers, and set designers. They call themselves the Ghost Army. Each man in the unit comes from an unlikely background. There are painters from the Pratt Institute, sculptors from art schools, architects who once designed theaters, and sound experts who once mixed jazz records. Together, they've spent months developing an arsenal of illusions. Inflatable tanks, fake jeeps, phony airstrips, wooden artillery guns, even entire tent cities, all designed to fool enemy reconnaissance. Inside a smaller tent, Sergeant George Reblach checks the sound equipment. Massive speakers, the kind used for open-air concerts, are stacked beside crates marked Sonic Device Unit. From these, they'll project the rumble of tanks and the clatter of convoys across the countryside, recorded earlier by the engineers of the 3,132nd Signal Company. The sound can be heard 15 miles away. Reblach wipes a streak of rain off his notebook. "Well, make it sound like 1,000 engines moving east," he mutters. All smoke and thunder. One of the sound men, a jazz drummer from Chicago, grins. "I guess we're scoring a war, huh?" Harris steps outside to inspect the growing illusion. The field is transforming by the minute. A line of inflatable Shermans glistens under the moonlight. Canvas trucks are positioned beside them, their headlights replaced with dim bulbs powered by portable generators. From a distance, it's indistinguishable from the real thing. To add authenticity, soldiers walk in deliberate patterns, leaving boot prints and tire tracks in the mud. They hang laundry lines, scatter ration tins, even leave the occasional newspaper lying open near a fake command post. Details make the illusion real, and this is an illusion that must fool not just human eyes, but cameras and analysts at enemy headquarters. "Gentlemen," Harris says, raising his voice against the wind, "think of this as opening night. Only we don't get a rehearsal." His men laugh quietly, but the tension doesn't leave their faces. The secrecy surrounding their mission is absolute. Even nearby Allied troops don't know who they are. Their trucks bear no unit markings. Their orders are sealed. If captured, they can't admit what they're doing because deception, by its nature, can't exist in the light. Hours later, as dawn begins to bleed into the horizon, the sky glows grey and gold. Overhead, RAF reconnaissance planes pass low, photographing the armoured division that wasn't there yesterday. By the time the Germans study those photos, it will look like Patton's army has assembled in full force. In truth, there are only a few hundred men standing among balloons. Private Shilstone leans on his shovel, watching one of the inflatable tanks sway slightly in the wind. It looks absurd, but he knows the illusion works. He's seen photos of their earlier tests. German reconnaissance analysts were convinced by fake railheads and phantom airfields, so convincing that Luftwaffe bombers wasted precious sorties attacking empty fields. Nearby, Corporal Bill Blass, a quiet fashion illustrator from Indiana, Hull later become one of America's best-known designers, sketches the scene in his notebook. Later, his drawings will tell a story that can't be photographed. The night a group of artists went to war, armed with paintbrushes, air pumps, and imagination. As the morning fog lifts, the Ghost Army stands ready for its first act. Columns of rubber tanks stretch across the meadows, flanked by fake artillery and jeeps with dummies behind the wheels. Camouflage nets ripple softly in the wind. Every illusion is perfect from above. Then, at 07:000 hours, the first transmission crackles through the radio. The 23rd begins to broadcast fake chatter, carefully scripted messages, designed to be intercepted by German intelligence. Red Fox to Alpha 2. Division moving to assembly area. Estimated strength 10,000. The words are meaningless, but the code phrases are chosen to mimic real Army procedure to enemy ears. It's confirmation that Patton's 1st U.S. Army Group is alive and well. That night, as the rain clears and the moonlight returns, the ghost soldiers gather by the campfire. Some play cards beside a row of deflated tanks. Others tune the sound equipment for the next night's operation. They joke about billing themselves as the greatest show on earth. But beneath the laughter lies the unspoken truth. Their performance could decide the fate of day. If the deception works, the Germans will hold back their panzer divisions in Calais, waiting for a phantom invasion. If it fails, the beaches of Normandy could become a slaughterhouse. The men of the Ghost Army don't carry rifles, yet the weight of their mission is as heavy as any soldier's pack. Each inflated tank, each false convoy, each carefully scripted message is part of a weapon unseen, a weapon made of art, sound, and fear. As the wind rustles through the hedgerows, Harris looks out over the field of silent shapes and murmurs to himself, "War is theatre, gentlemen." And tomorrow, the curtain rises. June 6th, 1944, the invasion has begun. Across the Channel, thousands of Allied troops storm the beaches of Normandy, while the men of the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops begin their own operation, one waged with no bullets, but the same stakes. At dawn, Sergeant John Jarvie kneels in the mud beside a set of loudspeakers disguised under a camouflaged net. He adjusts the knobs and signals to the sound truck idling behind a hedgerow. A moment later, the air fills with the deep, rumbling thunder of tanks. The ground itself seems to shake. The sound isn't real. It's a recording, captured weeks earlier by engineers at Fort Knox. But it's loud enough to carry across the valley, echoing like an army on the move. "Volume up," Jarvie mutters. "Let's give them a show." Through binoculars, observers watch the sound roll through the mist. Nearby farmers peek from windows, startled by the mechanical growl. To any German scout plane, the illusion is perfect, hundreds of vehicles advancing toward Calais. The fake armored columns even cast shadows that stretch convincingly across the fields, thanks to the carefully placed spotlights hidden in the grass. From 20 miles away, German radar picks up faint engine heat signatures, a trick created by burning oil drums and generators placed in patterns mimicking tank formations. Every sense the enemy has, sight, sound, even smell, is being played like an instrument. Lieutenant Colonel Harris listens through static as his radio intercept team picks up fragments of German chatter. Large movement near Boulogne. Armored division advancing. He smiles faintly. The deception is working. Farther south, the real invasion grinds forward through chaos and blood. On Omaha Beach, machine guns rake the sand. In the villages beyond, paratroopers fight through hedgerows and stone walls. But because the Germans believe another, larger attack is still coming at Calais, they hold their best panzer divisions back. The illusion has bought the Allies precious time. At night, the Ghost Army shifts positions like a traveling circus. They deflate tanks, load them onto trucks, and drive to a new site under cover of darkness. By dawn, the fields behind them are empty again, but miles away, another division appears overnight. Each move confuses German reconnaissance further, convincing them that Allied strength is far larger than reality. Private Shilstone helps tie down a truckload of rubber artillery pieces. His hands are raw from the ropes. "Feels like we're running a magic show," he says. "Yeah," answers Corporal Blas. "Sketching by lantern light." Except the audience shoots back. Their operation is divided into 3 branches: visual, sonic, and radio. The visual team handles the inflatables, camouflage, and dummy vehicles. The sonic unit crafts the noise of entire convoys, using layers of recorded engines, artillery, and even soldiers' voices. The radio team, led by specialists from the Signal Corps, broadcasts fake communications between imaginary battalions. Each element must work in perfect harmony, like a symphony of lies. In one operation near Normandy, they simulate the presence of the 2nd Armored Division. Real units slip away silently in the night, replaced by this small band of artists and engineers. Within hours, the illusion is complete. Fake tanks, radio chatter, and supply columns stretching into the distance. Enemy reconnaissance aircraft take the bait, reporting that the division remains in place. The ruse holds for days. "Think about it," Harris tells his men one evening as they eat cold rations under the stars. "If the enemy believes what isn't there, then we've already won before a shot is fired." He speaks softly, like a director addressing his cast before curtain call. Around him, the soldiers sit quietly, listening to the faint echo of their own recorded sounds drifting across the fields. But the work isn't without danger. They operate close to the front, often within earshot of real artillery fire. German patrols roam the countryside, and one misplaced move could expose everything. If captured, they have no heavy weapons to defend themselves, only pistols and silence. In late June, near the village of St. Lo, the Ghost Army sets up a decoy column just miles from the front. As dusk falls, they park their trucks in a narrow lane, and Harris orders the inflatables unpacked. The air compressors whine, rubber creaks, and soon the field is filled with ghostly silhouettes of tanks glinting in the fading light. Suddenly, a flare arcs into the sky. The men freeze. German artillery begins to thunder. Shells whistle overhead and burst nearby, sending plumes of mud and smoke into the air. The unit scatters for cover. A shell lands close enough to collapse one of the dummy Shermans, deflating it with a sad hiss. When the barrage stops, Harris crawls from a ditch, covered in dirt but laughing. "Guess they believed it," he says. The men cheer weakly, their nerves frayed but their pride intact. Being shelled, oddly enough, is proof that the illusion worked. The Germans wasted precious ammunition on air. By July, the Ghost Army has perfected its craft. They can set up a fake division in under 4 hours, complete with vehicle noises, radio nets, and convincing logistics. They've learned to imitate tire tracks using weighted rollers, and even to position fake fuel dumps using painted tarps that mimic spilled oil. Nothing is left to chance. Word of their success begins to spread quietly among Allied command. Though their existence remains top secret, generals start requesting their presence near key sectors. To soldiers on the ground, these men are ghosts who arrive at night, perform impossible magic, and vanish before dawn. One British colonel, unaware of who they truly are, reportedly remarks, "Whoever's making those fake camps down the road, give them a medal. The Jerrys don't know where to look anymore." Each illusion saves lives not by killing, but by confusing. Yet beneath the humor and ingenuity lies a constant tension. Every operation means risking discovery. Every illusion brings them closer to the real front. And in this strange war of shadows, a single slip could turn art into death. As night falls once more over the hedgerows, the men deflate another rubber tank and load it into a truck. The hiss of air escaping sounds almost like a sigh, the sound of ghosts disappearing. In the distance, thunder rolls over Normandy. Or maybe it's artillery. It's hard to tell anymore. War, after all, has become theatre, and this cast of artists performs beneath the world's deadliest stage lights. July 1944. Near Saint-Lô, France. The front is a storm of noise and smoke. Columns of blackened vehicles litter the roads. The sky is a pale bruise, smeared with the trails of aircraft. Amid the chaos, a small convoy of trucks marked only with stenciled serial numbers rolls quietly down a dirt track. Inside them, beneath tarps and crates, lies one of the most unusual arsenals in the entire US. Army, rubber tanks, canvas jeeps, wooden planes, and reels of magnetic sound tape. Captain Ralph Ingersoll rides in the passenger seat, flipping through a notebook of sketches and diagrams. Before the war, he was an editor and writer in New York, a man who once dealt in words and headlines. Now, he deals in shadows. "We're not soldiers," he once told a reporter long after the war ended. "We were showmen in fatigues." Their next operation is codenamed Brest. The plan: draw German attention away from a major push toward the city by simulating an armored build-up miles to the south. If done right, it'll convince the Wehrmacht to reposition its defenses, leaving the real assault route weaker. By dusk, they arrive at a flat stretch of farmland. The area is perfect: low hedgerows, open fields, and an abandoned barn that will serve as the fake division headquarters. Within hours, the visual team begins their transformation. Private Shilstone and 2 others haul out folded bundles of rubber and begin inflating them. The rhythmic hiss fills the air. Slowly, Sherman tanks rise from the grass like a conjurer's trick, ghostly, gleaming in the twilight. Each one is positioned at precise intervals, mirroring a real armored formation. Meanwhile, the radio section under Lieutenant Dave Richardson sets up their own theater of sound. Using mobile transmitters, they begin broadcasting carefully scripted chatter. The transmissions are coded, yet deliberately imperfect, as if made by hurried operators under real field conditions. Panther units cited requesting ammo resupply grid 27 by 14. The German listening posts pick it up almost immediately. Somewhere across the lines, analysts nod in satisfaction. The Americans are massing armor again. Exactly what they expect. Exactly what the Ghost Army wants. After dark, the Sonic crew drives in. The back of their truck holds turntables, amplifiers, and loudspeakers big enough to shake the windows of nearby villages. They unroll cables, point the speakers toward the valley, and cue the recording's real sounds of tanks clanking, trucks grinding, engines idling. Within minutes, the quiet countryside becomes alive with the phantom roar of a full armored column. Even the local French villagers, used to the constant rumble of war, are fooled. A farmer named Marcel watches from a hedgerow, whispering to his wife, "Les Américains arrivent, the Americans are coming." He has no idea they already are just not the ones he hears. In the barn, the officers gather over a flickering lantern. Maps are pinned to the wall, dotted with colored pins and grease pencil marks. Ingersoll traces his finger along the front line. If they take the bait, our boys hit from the west without facing those 88 seconds. That's the goal. Confuse, delay, distract. Outside, thunder rumbles again. For a second, no one's sure if it's real weather or German guns. The illusionists work through the night, rain soaking their uniforms, mud swallowing their boots. By morning, the entire field looks like a heavily fortified staging area to sell the act. The unit even erects fake camp signs, empty fuel drums, and a mess tent. They light cook fires using smoke bombs, just enough to be visible to reconnaissance aircraft. Every illusion needs details, and these men understand the art of detail better than anyone. Make sure the tents sag a little. Sergeant Reb Hart instructs. Real soldiers never pitch them straight. They even add a finishing touch. Tire tracks pressed into the mud using heavy rollers, leading in and out of the camp. Each impression is measured for depth and spacing to mimic the weight of a real Sherman. It's artistry at a military scale. Hours later, the deception begins to bear fruit. German reconnaissance planes buzz overhead, taking photographs. The men wave lazily, pretending to be ordinary geese. When the aircraft disappear beyond the horizon, Harris calls in. "They saw us," he says simply. Now we wait. By nightfall, intercepted communications confirm success. Enemy units near Brest are being redeployed north to face the Phantom Division. A portion of the German artillery is pulled from the front line entirely. In a war of inches, this illusion just saved lives. For the men of the 23rd, every successful ruse is both victory and performance. They speak of their operations as acts, their movements as scene changes. Some even keep private sketches of their setups, not as trophies, but as memory. They know these strange, theatrical victories will never appear in the headlines. But danger is never far. A few days later, as they prepare to move again, a patrol of German scouts stumbles near the camp. The Ghost Army can't afford discovery. Harris orders silence. Lights are extinguished. The men lie flat in the mud, barely breathing. The scouts move closer, their boots crunching just yards away. Then, at the last second, artillery fire erupts in the distance. Distracted, the Germans retreat toward the sound. The illusionists exhale, alive by sheer luck. When dawn returns, they pack up again deflating tanks, dismantling antennas, erasing every trace of the lie. Within hours, nothing remains but flattened grass and footprints. By afternoon, they're 30 miles away, setting up a new division. Their work becomes routine deception on command. One week, it's a phantom armor group. The next, a fake supply convoy. Each illusion calibrated to mislead enemy intelligence just long enough to tilt the battlefield. Some nights, as they rest on their cots, the sound team still plays back their recordings. Tank engines, artillery, the rumble of unseen armies. The noise comforts them, even though it's only an echo. In this war of illusions, sound is both shield and companion. Strange, isn't it? Shilstone says quietly. All the real soldiers fight to make things end. We fight to make them believe it's just beginning. No one answers. Outside, the first light of dawn touches the silent field, glinting off the rubber hulls of tanks that will soon vanish into the mist. The Ghost Army moves again, an invisible hand shaping the enemy's fears, one illusion at a time. March 1945. Western Germany. The Rhine River glimmers under a pale moon, its surface broken by the hum of Allied pontoon bridges stretching across the current. The war is nearing its end. But to the men of the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, the Ghost Army, this is their grand finale. Operation Viersen will be their masterpiece, the final illusion to help the real Ninth Army cross the Rhine unopposed. Lieutenant Colonel Billy Harris walks the riverbank with his flashlight, boots sinking into the mud. The chill wind carries the smell of oil, smoke, and thawing earth. Everything must look perfect by morning, he tells his officers. We were going to make the Germans believe an entire division is massing here, while the real one moves there. He points downstream toward a stretch of darkness where the Ninth Army prepares to strike. If the Ghost Army succeeds, German artillery will pound the wrong banks, buying the Allies time to seize the bridges intact. By 0300 hours, the performance begins. Trucks unload massive rolls of canvas and crates filled with inflatable tanks. Men work in silence, their breath forming ghostly clouds in the cold. Air compressors hiss, shapes rise from the fog like summoned spirits, rows upon rows of rubber Shermans, gleaming under the faint light of flares. The sound crew sets up loudspeakers along the river. Within minutes, the night explodes with mechanical life. The deep growl of tank engines, the metallic clang of pontoon construction, the rumble of trucks grinding over gravel, every detail meticulously mixed to suggest an army preparing to cross. The sound engineers, veterans of Hollywood studios, weave the recordings like an orchestra from across the river. German sentries strain their ears. They hear what they think is an approaching armored division. Hundreds of vehicles, generators, and heavy guns. To confirm, they radio for reconnaissance. But by the time the first Luftwaffe plane circles overhead, it sees exactly what the Ghost Army wants it to. A massive buildup of armor and tents. It's perfect theater. The radio deception team joins in next. Operators begin transmitting fake communications requests for fuel, ammunition, and reinforcements. The conversations are coded but credible, crafted by specialists who know how real units sound under stress. Red 1 to Blue Fox Bridge Company, delayed awaiting orders. The Germans intercept the chatter and fall for it completely. Orders go out to reposition artillery north of Viersen, diverting valuable firepower away from the true crossing point inside a camouflaged tent. Captain Ingersoll listens to the intercepted transmissions and smiles. "They've swallowed it whole," he says. "We're ghosts, gentlemen. And tonight we haunt the Rhine." While their deception unfolds, the real Ninth Army makes its move 10 miles south, crossing under darkness and minimal resistance. By dawn, Allied forces have established a firm bridgehead. When German counterfire finally begins, it crashes harmlessly onto the Ghost Army's empty fields, ripping through air, rubber, and canvas. Private Shilstone dives into a foxhole as fragments of shrapnel rain down. One of the inflatable tanks bursts with a hollow whump, collapsing into a puddle of mud. "Guess they found us," he mutters. "Yeah," another soldier replies, grinning through the mud. "Means we did our job." The bombardment lasts for hours. Dozens of fake vehicles are shredded. The field becomes a graveyard of deflated armor. But the damage is meaningless. Every shell here is one not fired at the real troops downriver. By noon, the skies clear, revealing the aftermath. Smoke drifts over the destroyed camp. Harris walks among the wreckage, his men exhausted but alive. "Pack it up," he says quietly. Show's over. One by one, they gather the remnants of their illusions, the flattened tanks, the torn canvas, the empty drums, and load them into trucks. Within hours, the site is clean, as if nothing ever happened. The German scouts who arrive days later find no corpses, no tracks, no division, only an eerie silence. The deception is hailed as one of the most successful of the entire war. Intelligence estimates later reveal that Operation Viersen saved thousands of Allied lives by diverting artillery and armor away from the real bridgeheads. The Ghost Army, as usual, receives no official credit. Their reports are sealed, their work classified, their very existence denied. That night, in a quiet farmhouse commandeered as quarters, the men finally rest. Someone sets up a phonograph, and soft jazz hums through the candlelight. Corporal Bill blasts sketches again, this time drawing the surreal sight of deflated tanks lying in the moonlit mud like the carcasses of monsters after battle. He looks up at Shilstone. "And you ever think about what happens when this is over?" Shilstone smiles faintly. "Well, go back to painting. Maybe no one will believe what we did." "They won't," Blass says. "That's the point. The war moves on. Town by town. Bridge by bridge. The Allies push deeper into Germany. The 23rd follows, still conjuring illusions wherever needed. They set up phantom divisions near Wesel, fake convoys in Cologne, false artillery lines outside Dusseldorf. Each act blurs the line between war and performance a little more. But beneath the triumph lies a quiet melancholy. These men know they are winning battles that history won't record. Their victories will be invisible, buried in archives for decades. As spring comes to Europe, the Ghost Army disbands one operation after another. Their tools of deception, the inflatables, the sound trucks, the painted props are packed away in crates, labeled simply training equipment. In April, when the war in Europe finally begins to crumble, Harris stands on a hill overlooking the Rhine one last time. The air is cold and still. Across the water, he can see the ruins of towns and the silhouettes of real tanks moving east. The sounds are genuine now engines, gunfire, and the low thunder of victory. He takes off his cap and whispers, the curtains closing. For the first time in years, there's no need for ghosts. April 1945. Western Germany. The front is unraveling. The Reich is collapsing under its own weight. Cities burning, columns of prisoners trudging west, roads choked with wreckage. For most Allied troops, it feels like the war is finally ending. But for the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, there's one last act before the curtain falls. Lieutenant Colonel Harris gathers his men inside an abandoned church outside Bonn. Dust floats in the sunlight, pouring through shattered stained glass. He spreads a map across the altar. "Headquarters wants one final show," he says. "A feint near the Elbe. It'll keep the enemy guessing where the main thrust is coming from." He pauses, letting the irony sink in a church, now serving as a theater of deception, around him. The men listen silently. They're exhausted, their uniforms worn thin, but the spark of mischief still lingers in their eyes. Private Arthur Shilstone sits near the back, sketching the cracked walls and broken pews. His drawings have grown darker lately. Less about the humor of inflatables, more about the strange beauty of their illusions fading into real destruction. He no longer paints the tanks as toys. They look like ghosts, sagging into the mud of history. Outside, trucks rumble past, filled with refugees and wounded soldiers. The world is moving on, but the Ghost Army still has a job to do. Within hours, they're back on the road, a convoy of trucks without insignia, carrying weapons made of rubber and wood, driving through a war that's almost over. They reach their new site by dusk, a valley near the Elbe River, dotted with empty barns and leafless trees. The wind is sharp and cold, carrying the smell of smoke from distant towns. Sergeant George Reb steps out, squints at the landscape, and says, "One last miracle, boys." The men get to work. Air compressors roar to life, echoing through the hills. Inflatable tanks rise again, their outlines glowing faintly in the lantern light. Fake artillery lines are set up with telephone poles painted green. Sound crews install their speakers along the ridge, aiming them toward the river. Soon the night fills with the metallic clatter of convoys and bridge-building crews, the same noises that fooled German intelligence again and again. The enemy, desperate and paranoid, takes the bait once more. Intercepted radio reports mention significant enemy activity near the valley. Units are diverted. Ammunition is wasted. The deception still works, even in the final weeks of chaos. But the men can feel it this time is different. The thunder of war has changed pitch. German fire is sporadic, hesitant. The skies are filled with Allied aircraft, and columns of real armor thunder eastward with unstoppable force. As dawn breaks, the Ghost Army's camp glows golden in the mist. From a distance, it looks alive: trucks, tanks, soldiers, smoke rising from cook fires. But step closer, and the illusion dissolves. The tanks are rubber, the soldiers are mannequins, and the fires are just smoke pots. Harris walks among his men, hands in his pockets, watching them move with practiced rhythm. "You know," he says quietly to Ingersoll, "I'll miss this." Ingersoll chuckles. "Miss lying for a living?" "Not the lying," Harris says. "The craft. The precision. We made something that shouldn't exist, and it worked." Nearby, Corporal Bill Blass sketches one last scene. The unit standing among their fake army, sunlight cutting through the haze. He'll take the sketchbook home someday, but he knows most of what they've done will vanish into secrecy. No medals, no parades, just silence. That night, they gather around a campfire, sharing the last of their coffee and rations. Someone plays a harmonica. The mood is strange, not celebratory, not sad, just suspended, like actors waiting for applause that never comes. Shilstone looks into the flames and says, "When people talk about this war, they'll remember the tanks, the bombs, the generals. But not us." "Good," Rebha answers with a grin. "Means we did it right." The laughter fades into quiet. In the distance, artillery flashes light up the horizon, not from their speakers, but from the real battle pushing toward Berlin. The sound is no longer illusion. It's the end of everything they've been pretending to be. Days later, the order arrives: stand down. The 23rd is to withdraw from the front and return to France. Their mission and their existence is to remain classified. The men are silent as the message is read aloud. Some stare at the ground. Others exchange tired smiles. They've done their part. But now they must vanish. Packing up feels different this time. Each deflated tank seems like a memory dissolving into air. The men fold them carefully, like relics of a strange religion. The sound trucks are silenced, the radio sets switched off for good. By nightfall, the camp is gone, just another patch of muddy ground under the endless European sky as their convoy rolls westward. Harris looks out the window at the passing countryside fields, flattened by shells, villages reduced to ash. He thinks about how many lives they've saved without ever pulling a trigger. "We fought with ghosts," he says softly. "And maybe we became them." Back in France, the unit is quietly disbanded. The men return to their old worlds, to art studios, design firms, universities. Bill Blass becomes a fashion icon. Arthur Shilstone paints landscapes. None of them speak publicly about what they did. Their mission remains buried in classified files, hidden from history for decades. Yet for those who lived it, the memories never fade. They remember the smell of wet canvas, the eerie creak of rubber tanks swaying in the wind, the laughter echoing through fields of illusions. They remember the feeling of creating something that could trick an army, not to kill, but to protect. In a war defined by destruction, they built something out of imagination. And in doing so, they proved that sometimes the greatest weapon of all is belief. May 1945. The war in Europe is over. Church bells ring through shattered towns as soldiers and civilians emerge from ruins. blinking into the strange sunlight of peace. Columns of Allied trucks move slowly through the wreckage of Germany, their engines muted by exhaustion. And somewhere near the French border, the men of the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops sit quietly in their trucks, watching the world they deceived return to truth. Lieutenant Colonel Billy Harris stands beside the convoy, staring at a signpost riddled with bullet holes. Paris to the west, Cologne to the east. The road between them is littered with burned-out vehicles, some real, some once fake. He exhales, the air cool against his teeth. "That's it," he murmurs. "No more illusions." Behind him, the men unpack one last time, not to build a decoy camp, but to dismantle their own. They spread out under the apple trees of an abandoned orchard, stacking crates of deflated tanks and coiled hoses. The equipment that once fooled German generals now looks like carnival junk. Private Arthur Shilstone paints quietly at the edge of the field. His canvas shows a landscape of fog, broken bridges, and men fading into mist, the ghosts of his unit. Caught between fiction and history, Bias painting not what he sees, but what he feels. A kind of melancholy that even victory can't erase. Nearby, Corporal Bill Blass folds his sketchbook shut. "You know," he says, "someday someone will find out about this. Maybe they'll laugh." Harris smiles faintly. Let them. It was the strangest war anyone ever fought. They gather for one last photograph, a group of tired men in mismatched uniforms, standing in front of a pile of rubber tanks. No medals, no flags. Just a snapshot of laughter and mud and disbelief. The caption, if there ever was one, might have read, "The Ghost Army, 1,945 Masters of Illusion." The next morning, the orders are official. The unit is to be dissolved. The men are reassigned or discharged. Their mission, successes, and operations are sealed under top-secret classification. Their names vanish from rosters. Their stories disappear into locked archives. For decades, no one speaks of them. The history books move on Normandy, Market Garden, the Bulge, Berlin, the Ghost Army, becomes nothing more than a rumor whispered among veterans, an American unit that made whole divisions out of thin air. Years pass. Shilstone returns to art school. Blass designs clothes that walk runways instead of battlefields. Reb H runs a small business in New Jersey. None of them forget. When they meet years later, they speak about it the way soldiers recall dreams uncertain if it ever truly happened. Only in the 1,980 seconds do the files begin to surface. A handful of surviving veterans, now grey-haired and unassuming, are interviewed by military historians. Their words are quiet but sharp, like echoes long delayed. "We weren't heroes," one of them says. "We were magicians." The truth astonishes everyone who hears it. Artists and sound engineers, using little more than creativity and courage, had deceived one of the most disciplined armies in history. Inflatable tanks, fake radio chatter, staged troop movements, an entire arsenal of imagination. Historians later estimate that their operations saved between 15 and 30,000 lives. Yet even then, the recognition feels small compared to what they accomplished. There are no statues, no grand memorials. Just memories and one or two surviving inflatables preserved in museums, their rubber faded and patched, still carrying the ghostly shapes of war. In 2013, nearly 70 years after the war, Congress finally honors them. The surviving members, a handful of old men in worn suits, gather in Washington. Their hands shake as they salute. Some for the first time since 1945. A general reads aloud, "For extraordinary ingenuity and courage in the face of danger, the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops is hereby recognized as one of the most unique and effective units in U.S. Army history." As applause fills the chamber, Shilstone smiles faintly. "We fooled the Germans," he says to a reporter. "But I think we fooled history too." Hes right. Their work changed warfare forever. Modern military deception, from radar bluffs to cyber camouflage, can trace its roots back to that strange, secret troupe of artists in muddy boots. The Ghost Army proved that the power of imagination could shape the outcome of battle as surely as bullets and bombs. Today, their story lives on in museum exhibits, documentaries, and whispered admiration from soldiers who understand the delicate art of misdirection in photographs. Their faces seem both young and ageless men caught between two worlds. The stage and the battlefield, creation and destruction, truth and illusion. As the sun sets on that orchard long ago, Harris looks one last time at his men before they depart. "Gentlemen," he says, "take a bow." They laugh, shoulders slumping with relief. For once, the applause is real, the wind rustling through the leaves, the sound of the war finally ending. When the trucks roll away, the field is empty. Only flattened grass remains, pressed in the shape of 100 tanks that were never there. The ghosts fade into history. But the illusion they created, the belief that imagination could win battles, never truly disappears.